I am going to call the meeting of the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District to order. We're doing something a little bit different, which we do quite often this time of year. The Shelton Metropolitan Parks District has a public hearing on its part of the budget. So we'll do that before we do the regular commission meeting, and I believe we'll wait to do the Pledge of Allegiance and all that kind of stuff when we go into the regular meeting. So we have before us a public hearing on the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District preliminary budget, and I will turn that over to Kathy at this time.
Good evening, Park Board Commissioners. Thank you. Today for the hearing, I want to state that the 2014 preliminary budget for the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District remains the same as what was presented last Monday, with the budget totaling $585,971. Now, this budget does includes $428,216 of revenues from property taxes. This is a 1% increase from the previous year, plus new construction, and this also includes $1,321 of taxes that were refunded in 2013. Now, again, the budget remains the same as what was presented last Monday.
Seems like last year.
And so unless there are any questions on what was presented last Monday, I would just like to, or any questions on the property taxes, I'd like to move forward with the recommendation. So are there any questions?
Any questions by the board? Okay, there'll be an opportunity for public comment about this if there are any questions from the public about the Parks Board budget or the property tax issue. Seeing none, Kathy, what is our next step?
The next, staff recommends request introduction and adoption of resolution number 091113. That's the resolution for the Shelton Metropolitan Park District of Shelton, Washington, increasing the ad valorem taxes for calendar year 2014 and adoption of the 2014 levy certification.
Okay, and did you want to do that tonight, or did you want to do that in conjunction with the regular budget?
No, I think it needs, after the hearing is closed,
Mm-hmm.
then I would think that would be done then.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other public comment about the public hearing? Seeing none.
Mr. O'Leary had a question.
Yes.
I think it's your option. If we delay it, then we need to do another Metropolitan Park District meeting in front of the normal City Commission meeting,
Okay.
where we can redo it again. So I think staff's preference is, these are generally not controversial,
Right.
is to, if it's okay, would be to pass it. Otherwise, we can do it again next week or the week after, or whatever your choice is. We do need to get it done fairly quickly because we've got to meet deadlines under state law in order to be able to collect property tax.
Okay. Are you comfortable with proceeding?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing on the budget for the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District, and I would ask for a reading of resolution number SMPD 09-1113.
Resolution number SMPD 09-1113, a resolution of the Shelton Metropolitan Park District of Shelton, Washington, increasing the ad valorem taxes for calendar year 2014.
Okay, and can we do one motion for the budget and the ad valorem?
This is just for the ad valorem.
Yeah.
This is just for the ad valorem taxes, the resolution and the levy certification. That's not the budget.
Okay, okay, okay. Is there a motion to approve resolution number SMPD 09-1113?
I make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to
clarification, and the levy certification
Okay,
needs to be.
And the levy certification.
okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number SMPD 09-1113, approving increasing ad valorem taxes for calendar year 2014 and the levy certification. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And there is another opportunity for general public comment, if there is any at this time. Seeing none, we will not have then another meeting in December, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Until December 2nd.
Oh, there will be another meeting, December,
Yes,
okay.
that's where we'll.
To
have
approve the budget.
The final
Okay.
budget hearing.
Okay, so we'll announce the next meeting of the Shelton Metropolitan Park District Board for December 2nd, prior to the regular commission meeting, and that will be to approve the budget for the Park District. Okay? And the Shelton Metropolitan Park District Board meeting is adjourned.
At this time, I would like to call our regularly scheduled Shelton Commission meeting to order. Would you please stand and we'll pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We have a jammed-packed meeting tonight. Many things that we're going to be doing. We're going to be weaving in and out, I think, 3 or 4 separate times from our regular commission meeting into our public hearing sections. I would say if you have anything to say, there are, I think, 5 or 6 opportunities throughout the evening. One would be like general public comment time, but if you have something to specifically say about in the public testimony type in one of our 3 separate hearings, that would be the time you'd want to talk about those issues. So we're going to be moving forward. There'll be plenty of opportunity if somebody wants to say some things to us. So the first thing on our agenda is our regular weekly commission reports. Commissioner Pennell?
I believe we will all be attending an AWC meeting on Wednesday over in Olympia. That's my report.
All right. Commissioner Olson?
I have the same report.
And tomorrow morning, I will be attending a left board meeting. And then I will be also going to the AWC, which is Association of Washington Cities, a regional meeting in Olympia on Wednesday evening. That concludes my commission report. Next is the opportunity for general public comment. If you just have something you'd like to say, now is an opportunity. We allow 3 minutes per person. If you're looking to talk about specific issues, we will be getting into those. And so, is there anybody that wants to speak right now? Generically? I think I have a few people signed up. So, is it Tracy Moore? Do you want to speak now or in the other sections?
Well,
You can speak now.
I don't want to be classified as generic,
Well, that's what we got here.
and I think I want to speak now.
Okay.
I would just like to compliment Commissioner Olson on taking the initiative to pursue an interlocal agreement with Mason County to secure some funding for preservation efforts. It has been a long time since we've had any funding to speak of for our preservation board. And historic preservation can be a very important tool for promoting economic development and tourism activities, and can ultimately be a valuable incentive for motivating property owners to do improvements to rundown and underutilized buildings. The Preservation Board, I was on it for a number of years, and during that time, we, in order to make a difference in our community, often had to do things like fundraisers and donating stamps. And the money generated by this, it doesn't appear will make it's not a huge amount of money, but it will definitely make a difference. And I just wanted to once again commend Commissioner Olson and whomever you worked with at the county, and compliment our Preservation Board on the fact that they will be able to carry on and have a little bit of money to do that with. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, there's somebody here who lives at 1517 Dickinson. And if you, I just couldn't quite get your first name. What is your first name again?
Tom.
Tom, that's right, Tom. Tom, would you like to speak for a few minutes to us?
Sure.
Okay.
James Harriet in his book, All Creatures Great and Small, notes that when you can't treat the cause, you treat the symptoms. With poverty, we've been focusing on treating the symptoms, but we can do better. Of the causes of poverty, homelessness, and incarceration, missing fathers or fathers that provide poor role models are cited in up to 2/3 of the cases. The National Fatherhood Initiative is an attempt to correct this. A father's duties exist even without marriage and have been noted to reduce poverty and homelessness, but also crime in both adults and the children. The fathers themselves are less likely to commit crime. By hosting or convincing some local group to host the following 24/7, Dads Matter and Dr. Dad, we both reduce crime and poverty in the future and in the present. Thank you. Would you like to have these?
Well, I'll take it. Yeah, I love reading material, so I'll take one of those, seeing as how you brought them for us.
Actually, they're two
There's
separate.
two separate things, right? Okay, well, I'll have them in our commission room there, and if any of the commissioners want to read them, they can. Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. All right. Anyone else like to speak at this time before we move on into our other matters? Okay, so what we're going to do at this point is we're going to have a public hearing. We're actually going to have three separate ones. So the first one is we're going to recess out of our regular meeting and open a public hearing, and this will be concerning our 1% ad valorem tax, and also our, I believe we're going to be talking about our budget, but we're only going to be voting on the tax issue tonight, I believe. So we're closing our regular meeting, and we are now opening a public hearing, and Mr. Dave O'Leary, our city administrator, and financial director Kathy Byerly will be presenting a briefing.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm here tonight in the public hearing to bring forth again the preliminary budget, and as I said for the Metropolitan Park Districts, it's the same as what was presented last Monday. There's been no changes to the monies, but I do want to mention a few clarifications that were done to the budget document. So if you would like to open your budget document to page 1, on that we just merely changed the year, the wrong year was in there. And then on page 14, under employee costs, the second paragraph is sort of a clarification on the reorganization that included in this preliminary budget is a reorganization of the Public Works and Community Development support staff and an engineering position, which results in the same number of employees. This reorganization replaces a 1 point FTE projects and purchasing coordinator and a half FTE project coordinator with a 1 FTE confidential administrative assistant and a half FTE projects and purchasing coordinator. And additionally, it replaces the regional water and sewer project manager with an associate engineering position. So we end up with the same number of staff members, just sort of a reorganization of them. So I wanted to clarify that. Then on page 19, under the list of general fund requested new projects, programs, or capital purchases, the already included in the revenues and expenditures for the general fund was the part of the Evergreen Safe Routes program that was operational. It just wasn't included in this list. So right now it's about halfway down under police and streets, supplies and signage for Evergreen Safe Routes program, $43,000, which is 100% supported by grant revenues. And then last but not least, on page 29, the Solid Waste Fund. Under the 2014 requests, there were two overtime requests. The second one was listed as $3,600, and it really was just $3,000. So those are the changes to the preliminary budget document for 2014. And now, in the 2014 preliminary budget for the city, it remains the same as presented last Monday, totaling $47,466,822. It's for the whole city. The general fund's 2014 preliminary budget of $12,904,483 includes a regular property tax levy of $1,717,000. This is a 1% increase over the base of 2013's and new construction. It also includes $6,881 of taxes that were refunded in 2013. Additionally, it includes an EMS property tax levy of $205,000. Now, there was no increase on the EMS tax levy. There was, as a matter of fact, a reduction. Since the assessed valuation has been declining still, it caused the levy to bump up against the maximum rate. So there was a reduction in that levy for 2014. Also, the bond fund's 2014 preliminary budget of $515,681 includes a property tax levy of $228,750, and this is merely the amount of debt payment for the unlimited tax general obligation bonds, the refunded unlimited tax general obligation bonds debt payment for the year 2014. And then the Fireman's Pension Fund's 2014 preliminary budget of $387,996 includes a property tax levy of $140,000. That is a 1% increase over the base of 2013's plus new construction, and it also includes $559 of taxes that were refunded in 2013. Now, in the documents that support the briefing, you'll see this information in the ordinance. It lists the actual levy rate from the previous year was a little over $1.8 million, which includes $1.688 for the general fund and $137,614.93 for the fire pension fund. That's our regular property tax levy. The EMS levy from the previous year was $213,287.27, and then there was a voter approved the refunded unlimited tax general obligation bonds, which was for the public safety and community center building here. And it includes the amount of the 1% increases. And attached to the ordinance is the levy certification that states the amounts that I had just mentioned earlier that are included in our 2014 budget. So are there any questions on either the budget or the ad valorem taxes?
Questions? I did have a question because, as we know, I think it was last Monday we were presented the budget, and my comments were that I was quite concerned about the cutting of a police officer, and I believe also my desperate attempts to try and pull back the increase in the sewer rate from the estimated 21%, I believe, in February. And so, is there any report or any information, have we addressed those issues, or is there any hope on those?
I know we're still working on the preliminary budget. The time between now and December 2nd, we will be looking into those issues.
Yeah, we've got a presentation for you tonight on the sewer rate increase. That's the wolf that's the door now, because we've got that up for a judgment within the next couple of weeks. The budget as a whole, it's been our judgment to wait until we get this done, to focus our energies on what's in front of us now, and then we'll get after the other issues after we get finished with this. So.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the commission at this time about those issues? Seeing none, now if anyone wants to talk about the budget, this is a public hearing, and public testimony would be now. So if you would like to speak about the budget or about the ad valorem tax, now would be the opportunity. So we would need you to sign name and phone number. So we have a partial list, or anybody want to? No one signed up? Okay.
Sewer rates. You got your name down.
Yeah, there's several opportunities.
Do I need to speak only on that, or can I
No,
combine
you can combine them, I think.
Can I combine?
I would think that if you want to provide public testimony on the public, the budget, then,
Well, the police and the sewer.
then that would be the general budget. You should.
Okay, so I should wait?
No, you should do so now about the police. This is
Come on
a
up.
public hearing for the budget, which includes.
Yeah, well, I'll just say what I'm going to say, and you can tell me if I'm... Hello, Mayor Krantz and Commissioner Pinnell and Commissioner Olson. I am Kathy McDowell, and I live at 326 South Fifth Street, Shelton. I'm going to read this letter so that I don't go away saying, oh, I wish I'd said something. I'm coming tonight after looking at the 2014 preliminary budget for the city of Shelton, and I'm shocked. With all due respect, commissioners, you need to remember that you were voted in by the people, and the people have the right to know why you are considering cutting one police officer next year. We cannot afford, safety-wise, to cut a police officer. The police are a part of the safety infrastructure of the city. If you even remove one police officer, you are diminishing the safety of our city to a greater degree. I believe you also need to continue to look for the money outside our city to help with the high rates of our sewer. Rates were raised 22% a few months ago, and now you are expecting to raise them another 21%. The citizens' wages do not match the rate hikes we are experiencing. You need to get in and dig deep for money wherever it may be. Haven't you considered any other areas in the city's budget that could have been cut other than the police officer? You have a city full of citizens that want answers to these budget issues, and I believe I'm speaking for the citizens. Please consider what I am suggesting before you present the final budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to do a public? You have to come and then sign in, write their name and address, and we will. This is public testimony, and this is what we encourage here at City Hall.
Thank you very much, Commission. I'm Forrest Cooper, 409 West Railroad. And I was looking through the budget just a little bit and going through there, and there was one item that actually stood out to me as seeming kind of expensive, and I just wanted to ask about it because it seemed kind of outrageous. And that's on page 25 under the water fund. It says that painting the high school water tank is going to cost $376,699. That's to paint the tank? Is that like an interior drain and paint? What is that? I mean, can anybody shed some light on why it's so exorbitant?
I'm sure one of our staff would love to answer that question. Mike Michael?
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. I think Forrest and I could go up and, knock her out a little quicker.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm talking about.
There's two things going on there. One, it is a fairly large tank. It's one of our smaller ones, but it still is a large tank, quite a bit of surface area. That does include both interior and exterior, fully stripping the exterior for sure, possibly the interior. Also, because it's a water tank, the interior in particular takes special coatings that are compatible with potable water systems.
Awesome. That's kind of what I was expecting and hoping to hear. I just wanted to clarify it. If it was just a basic paint, that sounds crazy. But so that probably includes like sandblasting the outside or stripping it down to the tank to make sure that it's
Yeah, that's
good for
correct.
years to
Yep.
come. Okay, awesome. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. All right, next, somebody else that would like to speak? All right, thank you. And next would be Robert Richmond.
Good evening. My name is Robert Richmond. I apologize to you that I haven't been focused on the budget and especially the sewer rates. My concern was when I read the newspaper. I don't live in Shelton. I own a lot of rental property in Shelton. And in the world that I live in, there is nothing that exists where you can ask for a 43% increase of anything. So no one in this room can go to their boss tomorrow and say, you know, I did my budget, and so I'm going to need 43% more money than I got last month. It's not going to happen. No city that I'm aware of can just adjust their budget and say, I did the math last night, and like everyone just needs to pay an awful lot more money. I deal with senior citizens. I deal with people on very fixed income. These people pay the water, sewer, garbage bill, but I get the bill. I'm on the line for it. The city of Shelton says, Mr. Richmond, it's your obligation and you will pay it. There's only so much that I can offload to my tenants before I'm going to have to say, well, apparently the city of Shelton didn't balance their budget correctly 8 years ago, 5 years ago. So you know what? I'm going to have to start underwriting it. So you know your bill that's $100, well, I'm going to have to eat $20 of it every month. And I don't feel very good about that. I certainly hope, Mayor Krantz, I read in the newspaper, if there's other ways that we can redeal the deck of cards financially, that would be wonderful. And I say that for myself and all of my tenants and all the people in the city of Shelton that are on fixed budgets. They don't make the 100 and some thousand. They are in a different deal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it is obviously, I am very concerned about it. We are working on it. The city administrator, I have dragged him over to Olympia about 7 times, and we are still going, looking for help in this area. Past 3 months, the main thing that I think about every night when I go to bed is a 43% increase to the citizens. I'm doing everything I know to do. And in defense of why, of the past, all the projects we've done, what has happened is we didn't really anticipate the recession. The recession happened and we're still in it. And had we had some better financial outcome, a better growth, then we possibly could be addressing this. It would be a little bit easier. But unfortunately, the city is really faced with either defaulting on their loans or moving forward. We're still working on it. I'm, as you know, if you read the newspaper, I'm pushing any and every button I can to at least attempt to lower those. I am very concerned, not about me or people that have good paying jobs, but about the citizens that live here in the city that are on fixed income. And it's an unfortunate thing that has happened, but we are working on it. And I know that's what I'm trying to do. So that enough said on that. We just, all I can say is I'm looking and trying to figure out how we can do it the best we can. So, anyone else like to speak concerning the budget or the 1% ad valorem tax there? If no one else has signed in, then that ends our public testimony section, and I close this public hearing. Now, it's staff's recommendation to hold a first reading of the levy ordinance, number 1837 tonight, and place the second reading and the levy certificate, okay, on the consent agenda for November 12, 2013. And I would ask my fellow commissioners if they concur that we move forward with this. So, I would request a first reading of ordinance number 1837-1113, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, increasing the ad valorem tax in the City of Shelton for the calendar year of 2014.
Ordinance number 1837-1113, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, increasing ad valorem taxes in the city of Shelton for calendar year 2014.
And place the second reading of this ordinance and levy certificate, I'll just use that, on the consent agenda for November 12th, 2013. Okay, we will do that. Very good. First page done. Moving right along. Next, we are going to recess out of our regular meeting and open a public hearing. And this public hearing is concerning regulations regarding medical cannabis collective gardens and recreational marijuana. Mr. Steve Goins, I think you're going to present a briefing on this.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm providing a overview of this topic for your some background information and explaining the alternative ordinances that are before you tonight. We're not asking for any sort of voter recommendation. We're still in a dialogue phase. We'd like to get some feedback, maybe hear some public testimony, and with that, come back with what we believe will be something for consideration at that point. These alternatives have some similarities, and I think I'll probably say this again when I conclude, you're not necessarily limited to choose one or the other. You can decide if there's aspects of each one that you like, and we can try to meld those. The city attorney can work with me on just how to make all that come together. But we wanted to give you some different alternatives to think about tonight. So just again, as some background information, 2011, a Senate bill established collective gardens, and that the basic premise is that 10 qualifying patients can work collectively in a garden and have up to 45 plants for medicinal purposes. And later in the year, the citizens voted yes on Initiative 502, and that established a process to create a production, distribution, and retail sales of recreational marijuana to anyone over 21 years old. We responded initially to the collective gardens regulations with a moratorium so we could better understand how to respond to this, with the understanding that the initiative was coming on the ballot and ultimately was adopted. So we've been in a moratorium now just over 2 years, trying to sift through all the information, and what we're trying to do now is lift that moratorium in the coming months and have some regulations in place to move forward with. The state has been working on those regulations, and in fact, they adopted those last month. They'll go into effect, I believe, on November 16th. So within those regulations for recreational marijuana, there's really 3 different entities that they capture. The producers, which are basically a individual or entity that would hold a permit to produce or grow plants, deliver those plants, distribute those plants, and ultimately hand those off, if you will, to the processors and ultimately the retailers. The processor would take the raw material, if you will, and package it, label it, and do whatever they need to do to get that ready for the market. Hand it off to the retailers, who at a different location would handle the retail sales of those products, which might include marijuana-infused products. When the regulations were rolling out, the state wanted to put a cap on the number of entities that would pop up throughout the state, and Shelton was assigned a single location for a retail sales outlet, a license for that. There are 4 allowed in all of Mason County, but the other 3 must be in unincorporated areas. There's 1 opportunity to do this in Shelton. Part of those regulations include the proprietors establishing an operations plan, and that operations plan is a pretty robust set of requirements that the state will annually check up on as well as review initially during the initial licensing phase. This is not intended to be an exhaustive list. There's pages literally of these types of regulations, but I wanted to kind of touch on the high points here. The reason I should say this is important too is part of our response is we're relying heavily on the state to actually do these regulatory processes, and this licensing element will be something that we won't have to duplicate, but we're also relying on the state to ensure all these things are done, and there's a fair amount of measures here to try to control that. One of the measures is unlimited law enforcement access to the facilities. The police don't need a warrant, they don't need to go to the courts. They have the ability through this license, anytime they feel like there may be a problem, to go and investigate and check it out. The production facilities must be fully enclosed, and that's not necessarily inside a building. You can grow the product outside, but you have to have it in a contained manner where you have fencing and other security measures. That's what enclosed is really discussing here. And there's limits to how large these facilities can be. There's a tiering process within the regulations that speaks to that. If you're operating a retail sales establishment, that is the only business that you can operate there. If someone opened a shop somewhere within the town, we'll talk about where those are allowed later. My understanding is that's the only business that can operate within that facility. You can't have this supplement some other type of business activities. In addition, you can't open the product on premises, you can't consume the product on premises. Each of the facilities must have an extensive security system. The types of things they're looking for is beyond the fencing is like surveillance cameras, alarms, other types of measures to ensure that the product is taken care of. The employees, I understand, will be wearing badges, and they're evaluated themselves and have a process for ensuring that your employees are properly trained in other manners so that we know who's an employee there and who's not. This is one we've talked about extensively in this map. This is going to work here for me, I think. Yeah, I can use this on that board. These facilities are not allowed within 1,000 feet of what we've been deeming sensitive facilities, and I've listed those out here. They include elementary and secondary schools, playgrounds, recreation centers, child care centers, public parks, transit centers, libraries, or game arcades. And for the sake of the city, what this orange area describes is all of the facilities that were just listed there, and a 1,000-foot border has been drawn around them. So it leaves very little of our industrial or commercially zoned lands for these types of activities. This area here, which is just north of the Gateway Center, is about the only area that this seems viable at this time based on the state's required setbacks. These are not setbacks that we can deviate from even, they're the state's requirements. If we wanted to put this somewhere inside this let's call it salmon-colored area, the state would not permit it anyway. So these provisions are already in place. And during the review process, the city gets a chance to comment on any proposed licensing, and we can object, and if the objection can be substantiated by the licensing board, they can have a hearing, or there's some other measures that are included in the provisions that would further protect us if we felt there might be a problem. My understanding is they anticipate the kind of things that might make a favorable objection would be if your applicant is proposing it in an area where maybe there's a record of high crime, or there's some other concern that this may not be an appropriate location because of past activities. So that's all included in the state's provisions. I've got some photographs here of some facilities that are in this area that I've described up here. There's very few buildings within that now. You might recognize the one on the right is the Shell Station and the Roosters. This is the motel that's up against the highway, and there's a small office building there, which I think is currently the home of an insurance office. best we can tell, those are the locations where this would meet the state's setback criteria in town. There are areas in town, and I have another map here. This map indicates the zones within the city, and you can see this sort of goldenrod yellow area here, and there's some up here. That's a commercial industrial zone. Right now, this larger one here is to the north is the land that's proposed for the business park for the Shelton Hills development. They're years away from being able to accommodate this kind of use because the infrastructure needs to be put in and those kinds of things. But from a zoning standpoint, it would be feasible to do that here if our prerogative was to also include a commercial industrial designation for this use. In addition, there's a couple areas up here. I think one of them is the back portion of the Hiawatha facility, and there's some other vacant land that's in the most northeasterly corner of the city that would accommodate that use as well. Let's see if I can. So what this describes is the two alternatives that were under consideration. The first one, as I presented before, tried to establish a separate process to accommodate collective gardens with a similar licensing program that the state has adopted for these retail marijuana outlets. We called it a regulatory license, and the same stipulations that the recreational marijuana facilities would require, the city would impose on a collective garden as part of what's proposed here. And that's what this portion describes here. All marijuana producers, processors, retailers will be licensed. That would include fire and building code provisions, but as well, we would establish a regulatory license process to review, approve, and inspect collective gardens. So we'd put those in a similar category. We would limit where those could go to the general commercial zoning district, which is those 4 sites I previously showed on the slides, and again would require that the setback criteria that's in I-502 be met for collective gardens as well. That was the first original proposal. The second alternative proposal that was in your packet looked at this a little differently, and this seemed to be more of a trend that where things were going in other parts of the state, that any marijuana business would be required to first secure a state license. That's important because right now there is not a licensing process for collective gardens. The state would have to create those in order to allow those to be licensed properly. Secondly, that ordinance would treat any marijuana business that doesn't have a state license as a public nuisance, giving us the mechanisms, the tools to abate that as needed. The third item would be to limit those locations for the retail marijuana businesses to the general commercial zoning district, which again would be those 4, the area above the gateway that I have previously described, and would specifically allow locations for marijuana producing and processing, the production side, not the retail side, to the industrial zoning districts. Based on our current regulations and our current land uses and using the 1,000-foot setback the state's providing, I'm not sure there is a location in Shelton that would meet those criteria. I wasn't able to find it anyway. That would be the alternative under consideration. I think I skipped a slide here. Let me go back here. I wanted to give you this brief update here. The state's been trying to have a plan of attack, if you will, for how to deal with collective gardens and some of the other elements that are out there. They've went through a rather lengthy process to regulate the retail production, and now they're turning their focus on the medical side. And they're recommending that marijuana patients no longer be allowed to grow marijuana at home, and that all marijuana for medical marijuana dispensaries would comply with the retail regulations. They all be under one umbrella, if you will. It's anticipated that the legislature will either consider combining those into one type of regulatory process or establishing a separate process for those medicinal marijuana operations. Lastly here, the City of Seattle recently passed an ordinance that in fact did just what we're describing here. They required all medical dispensaries to be licensed under the recreational marijuana standards or to be shut down by 2015. They're anticipating that the state would create some sort of regulations, or if that hasn't happened by 2015, these operations would be just set aside. So I think with that, that concludes my presentation.
All right. Any questions or comments for Mr. Goins?
Just a clarification, Steve, what happens if the city of Shelton passes an ordinance and then the state comes along and passes a different one, which takes precedence?
If the state's regulations would differ from ours, the states would preempt the cities. It's likely that we may need to respond to what the state does down the line here, and that's not uncommon.
Right.
Part of the reason we're here today is we've been waiting 2 years for the state to give us some more direction here, and we've got some of that. And there's been a lot of interest in ending the moratorium and moving on, if you will.
Right.
If the state doesn't establish a process for collective gardens, for instance, I think we'd be fine either way. If the state doesn't have that process, the applicants are just not able to move forward. If the state has a process, that's fine. We have one too.
Okay.
So either alternative, I think, works for us in that regard.
Steve, originally, when they first started this, the 1,000 feet were, I believe, down to 400 or 500 feet. And there's been talk of going back to there again. How would that affect your zoning issues and where it would be allowed then?
That would expand the areas where it would be allowed, certainly. The Liquor Control Board, I guess, didn't feel they had the authority to make that change. It was something that they wanted the legislature to consider, and they didn't have that discussion in the last session. They may have it on this session. It sounds like they're more interested in dealing with the marijuana side at this point, so I'm not sure that they're going to alter that setback criteria. What we never know.
If they did decrease that, we wouldn't necessarily have to adopt that part of it. We could still have our own.
We could establish regulations that maintain that 1,000-foot buffer, certainly.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I was probably one that voted to prolong the moratorium until things were more stable. And so my advice would just be to make it probably as restrictive and as regulated as possible. So that would be my advice. So you're looking for advice on this, and so it's a lot of work, and so that's what I have to give you.
We'll have the city attorney coming to a future meeting, and we can discuss some of the nuances of this to a greater extent.
Okay, we have to do a public testimony too on this. So, all right, thank you very much, sir. All right. So we have, this is our public testimony time here. It looks like Mr. Tom Davis, if you'd like to come and speak about this issue.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. As you know, I'm not a proponent of marijuana in any form, and I'm on a couple of committees, subcommittees for Veterans Affairs and so on that actually address this issue. And I'll be mentoring veterans with drug and substance abuse issues. Having said that, that's the wave of the future, and to resist it is futile. I'm sorry to hear that you're going to see your way clear to just keep this, Mr. Mayor, as restrictive as possible, simply because this is an income-generating opportunity. And it'll be an income-generating opportunity whether you take it or whether you don't. With our current state of affairs fiscally in the county, I don't think you can turn your back on any opportunity that generates income at this time. The city of Silver Salmon, where I just don't know where that is, but evidently has decided that they will submit an application in the name of the city for a retail operation. That's forward thinking. If you want to keep it regulated and you want to keep it under your control, then the city should also apply. And perhaps they could get an application granted, and then they can run it any way they see fit. Bear in mind that there's a lot of tax money at stake here. When you're a producer and you go and you sell to a processor, that's 25% excise tax, plus any B&O tax and any sales taxes applicable. The processor sells to the retailer, there's another 25% plus sales tax. And actually, the processor, the producer itself has a 25% sales tax, so you get 75% sales tax plus B&O taxes plus your regular sales tax. You've got about 100% sales tax on this commodity. There's a lot of money that can be generated by this. Again, it is very unlikely at this point that any producer and processor is going to look for a site within the city limits, simply because the sense is that the city feels so restrictive about this issue, and also just the lack of appropriately designated area to do so. And why would someone pick the city when they have the whole county at their disposal, which we will discuss at a public hearing tomorrow at the county commissioners. I would just like to leave you with this one point, that I would very much encourage the city to apply for a retail sales permit within the city limits, and thereby maybe we could offset some of these sewer issues and some of these tax issues if we generated a little bit more money, and hopefully you'll consider that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Does anyone else like to talk about this issue? If you would, we can take your opinions here, and if please, what you do is sign name, and you can, I got a list of these things, we'll probably have more, just
Normally, I don't speak, but I feel compelled to do this, and thank you, Commissioners and Mayor Krantz, for listening. I have to kind of echo a little bit of what Tom Davis said, because being in the news, we've heard a lot about medical marijuana, we've heard about the retail sale, and we see a huge effort going forward. And there's a big competition for the grow operation. Now, the grow operation is not to supply Mason County or Shelton. It's to supply other large metro areas that have restrictions just like these, that have no place to grow. And that would be the Seattle, Portland area. You are competing with Kitsap County because they're aggressively going after the business just as much as some of the people are starting to wake up here. Willapa Bay, back in October, went over, Marcus Charles, I believe we'll remember his name. He's the one that we wouldn't talk to. He went over to Willapa Bay, started an operation. Now there are 6 operations. That is, quote, the Silicon Valley of cannabis. It sounds funny, it sounds weird, but I think that we need to embrace this change. We need to address the issues that are associated with it. We're fearful of it being abused. We're fearful of it for our children. That means we need to do a whole lot of education and work with those people to meld those requirements in so that we solve the problem and we get something called a JOB in this county, in this city, so that we can start turning the economy around. And it's up to us. And it's up to you to open your minds and deal with the situation at hand, not run away from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, for your comments. Anyone else like to speak to this issue? You have an opportunity. This is public testimony time. If not, we are just about ready to close this public hearing, which we are doing right now. So that public hearing is closed, and staff is requesting our direction. I kind of said that I was one of those that wanted to continue the moratorium, and that if I had recommendations, it would be restrictive. The other commissioners have already canceled the moratorium and are moving forward, so their opinions in this matter would be much more important than mine, because I'm coming from a negative perspective. Not being a negative guy, generally speaking, but on this one issue. Having lived through the 60s and whatnot, I usually approach this a little more cautiously than maybe other people do. So that's my comments on it. My fellow commissioners have a different viewpoint, and they are the ones that have voted to cancel the moratorium, so their input would be probably more beneficial because we've already ended my issue. So that's my statement on that, and so I don't know if they want to, do you have anything more to say about this? Now would be the opportunity.
I would say that I think it's a job well done, Steve. I think we need to move forward on it. It's been kicked around enough. As Jerry stated, Mason County is being looked at as one of the real hotbeds of producing this. And the county will probably see most of the taxes, but it'll trickle down to Shelton. And I like the idea that you're aiming for putting the medicinal and the recreational use under the same regulations, because I think the state will move that direction. So I am absolutely for moving this down the road and lifting the moratorium and getting an ordinance in place sooner than later.
So, is there any more comment on this issue? If not, we are going to be moving into our next hearing, and so we're going to recess out of our regular meeting and into another open public hearing. And that hearing will be talking about our sewer rate adjustment, and that'll be our Public Works Director, Greg Clark, will be talking to us about that.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Greg Clark. I'm the Public Works Director, and I'm here to give you an overview of, we've had a consultant working with our comprehensive plan development, and they went into quite an extensive amount of effort to identify what the rate increases would need to be. And so I'm going to give you some history to why the rates are, why this has all happened, a little history. Steve did a similar presentation in March when we did our first wave of rate increases. And so I'm going to walk through this, and I'm not sure what button to push. We'll try this one. No, that's the back button. Which one goes forward here? Top one? Right. Let's go on backwards. Oh, wow. Okay, so we had some administrative orders given to us by the Department of Ecology back in '98 and again in 2009 when we started having violations at our treatment plant. These orders required us to do a couple of different things. We had a huge inflow and infiltration problem, and that is associated with our transmittal collection system that is all the pipes and network that collects our sewage and then takes it to the treatment plant. The town of Shelton has been here for several years, and a lot of the infrastructure that was put in early on has experienced a lot of problems due to soil conditions, and the problems are two-faced. One, the pipe joints and that become old and they leak, and that leakage then allows during the dry season for leakage to go out of the sewer system into the surrounding soils, which is the infiltration part. The inflow is that portion of the pipe flow in the winter months when the high water groundwater table comes up that allows groundwater, stormwater to flow into the pipe that then is transmitted to our treatment plant, which requires us to treat all of that stormwater. So by tightening the system up through this I&I projects we've been doing, reduces the amount of flow both in and out of our collection system. The treatment capacity of our treatment plants, due to the heavy rains, like I just mentioned, and that it's exceeded our solids ability at the treatment plant for capacity, and basically violated our discharge permit. So for those reasons, we move forward. This was another reason we had an urban growth area that required us to partner, didn't require us to partner, but I don't know, this thing's really, we had partners, and they're all going to come in separate. Apologize on this. Thought all this stuff was just going to be on the slide all when I turned it on. These were the partners the regional partners that got together. We had the State Patrol, the Department of Corrections, Mason County, PUD District Number 3, and the City of Shelton. We partnered together to look at our urban growth area and the areas that wanted to grow. And we basically, there was a lot of innovation associated with this, but we put together a joint partnership that built our satellite plant. And this particular plant produces reclaimed water, which can be used for industry. It's not necessarily drinkable, even though some guys do drink it, but I still wouldn't drink it. But it actually is cleaner than our potable water, amazingly enough. But this particular facility cost the city $15.6 million, but it put us in a position now where we can grow and provide opportunities for economic development in our town. It also reduced the discharge that was going out to Oakland Bay. Most of these violations were associated with biosolids going into Oakland Bay, which was affecting our shellfish industry and everything else. So this is a picture of our satellite reclaim facility. It's up by the airport. Anyway, it's a very nice facility that is going to give us lots of years of growth. The action plan associated with the mandates primarily affected almost every basin in our city. We completed Basin 1 in 2000. We completed the I&I projects for Basin 2 in 2008. Basin 5 we're just this year completing. This was a very large basin. And we still have Basin 3 to go, which the mayor and our administrator have been out trying to find grant money because it's another, and the numbers are coming up, it's over a $3 million project, and we need to find grant money for that. We're in the position where with DOE, we've talked to them, and for Basins 4, 6, and 7, our plan is to up the amount of maintenance, annual maintenance we do and repair, and our city crews will actually be doing a lot of the I&I improvements and restoration in those basins. So another problem that is still needing to happen, a lot of the projects associated with this, the Goldsboro Creek, we had a gravity force main, the gravity main, excuse me, that went underneath the creek. And it still is there even though we have a new force main that was installed in 2007 that replaces that, but we still need to remove this infrastructure from the creek, and we're still working with the partners, being Fish and Wildlife and the Squaxin Tribe and the Simpson Timber Company to get that out of the creek. So that's still an ongoing related project associated with this. Now let's just look at our downtown main treatment plant. This is one of the main drivers for this rate increase. We had $32 million we spent on upgrading the plant, which was completed in 2012. And this, like I mentioned earlier, we had these capacity issues. This has solved that. It increased our biosolids capability by almost 100%. And this is just, really a good thing for us because the key result associated with this is it gives us a 20-year planning horizon that we can allow development to happen within Shelton and provide that through this treatment plant upgrade. It also included a capacity improvement that increases, the I&I projects we did really was the capacity producer for the plant. Because we're not treating all this stormwater, we now have more capacity at the plant. And here's a picture of the new plant and the biosolids facility that's down at the end of Fairmont Avenue. And so So let's look at some of the environmental benefits of this particular improvements we've been doing. It improves, obviously, the water quality going into Oakland Bay. It supports long-term viability of our shellfish industry. It promotes the natural habitat of everything out there in the bay. It significantly reduced the total suspended solids that were in our discharge, and this has been kind of parlayed into what I'll talk about on the next slide, our new biosolids facility. But it reduced the nitrogen and the UV disinfection that happened at the plant. This eliminated the need for the use of chlorine, which also affects what we discharge into the bay. And then we included a slack tide discharge holding, so we can, not discharge when the tide is low. We can have the best dispersion out there in the bay as we can. So, wish these things would just come in all at once. Anyway, we put in this biosolids facility down there that basically takes all the solids out of our treatment process and turns it now into an actual usable product, what we call shell grow. It's a fertilizer. Those of you that went to the Mason County Fair this summer, they were handing out some bags of this stuff. It's available free of charge to the public to go down and get some. The farmers have been knocking at our doors. It's a very viable product, and it's I think going to be, and it also, the facility was sized so that we can actually accept sludge and that from other entities if we want to. I'm going to quickly go through here the work that was completed, because all of this drives why we need the rate increase that's being proposed here. The I&I projects we completed, I already talked about those, basins 1 and 2 and 5. The process still under construction is we have basin 3 yet to do. We've been doing, and those of you that live out towards Fairmont Street, you'll notice we just completed the paving out there. And the modifications down at the treatment plant, there's still some additional enhancements that need to happen, and those will actually be paid for under grant funding, but they are part of the new plant. We have future projects that need to be done. Basin 3, as I mentioned, we're pursuing grant money on that. We have Basin 6 and 7, which we're going to have our crews invest their time in fixing those as just a in-house project. So the required work that needs to happen over future years, we still, like I say, aren't done. We got Basin 3, and then we have several capital projects, and I'll look at those here. Let's see here. So one thing about the comprehensive plan, there were a lot of separate studies and plans that have been talked up through the years, and these pretty much compiled that whole document, which allowed us to go to developing the rate structure that was needed to facilitate all this work. But probably the primary thing is it adds the urban growth area into our comprehensive plan and into Shelton's urban growth area. And these are the projects and that will be coming forward in the future. We've got Basin 3, which is about a $3.1 million project. We have several trunk line improvements that are primarily needed when the Shelton Hills development develops. There's going to be a lot more flow that will be moving through these particular lines, and we need to upsize those to get them to the plant. That's about $2.3 million. Whoops. And then there's some studies that still need to happen associated again with the I&I evaluation, some of our pump stations and force main inspection. Not a lot of money, but it's still $300,000 worth over the next 7 years. And then the expansion to the satellite plant may need to happen as early as 2019 or 2020, and that's a big chunk of change again, 21 million bucks. But there is some new technology that might come into play there with some new membrane technology, and also with the Intertie project that we were granted through the Department of Commerce this year to move some of the flow from from the satellite plant to the main plant. So those capital improvements still need to happen at $26 million before 220. These slides here are going to drive exactly why the rates are needed the way they are. The primary loans and bonds that we've taken out to complete this work that's been done, again, it was mandated by the state. We didn't really have a choice. Basin 5 I&I project, we have a loan on this one for $5.7 million through the Public Works Trust Fund, and that requires a payment of $325,000 on an annual payment, which is a huge chunk of money to come out of our utility. The bond of $3.5 million was a USDA bond, and that annual payment is roughly $135,000 every year. And then the main treatment plant, the bond that we had there, has an annual payment of almost $1 million, $996. And that just is a huge amount of money that has to come out of our utility, and in order to pay for that, we've had to have rate increases. The two choices we looked at in March, scenario one was that for 8 months of the year, we would collect an increase of 22% in ongoing. That 22% would be, this was not selected, however, because it assumed that Basin 3 of the 2.9 million, now it's like 3.1 million, was going to be funded out of the utility rates, and that was not selected by our commissioners. The scenario 2 was selected. That was that a rate increase of 20%, which is what was adopted, would go into place, and we'd continue to look for grant money for Basin 3. So that's what we passed in March. At the time, I need a drink of water here pretty quick. The special note here is that at the time, we didn't understand some of the parameters associated with USDA's loan grant for Basin 5, and we were hoping we could move some of the funding that was allocated for Basin 5 to cover some of the costs of Basin 3. But when we got in talking deeper with them, they would not allow that. They require us now to make a separate Basin 3 application, which actually is under development and will be submitted shortly. It's actually part of the agenda item tonight, I believe. So this is kind of where we're at. November 2013, Phase 2 rate increase. And again, this is all for supporting the projects that are already completed and some of the project work that still needs to happen. These utility debt service payments that are required are huge. And the only way we can afford those is to have a rate increase. And this is money that's already spent, and we owe our loans and bond revenues to pay for those. There's still remaining on those administrative orders that we're required to do work on Basins 3, 4, 6, and 7. Again, Basin 3 we need grant money for. Basins 4, 6, and 7 will be done with our own maintenance staff. And then there's a whole lot of projects that still need to happen between now and 2020 that some of this rate money will pay for. Others will probably come from the GFCs, our general charge when new customers come on board. But the rate increases that are proposed excuse me, tonight are at the bottom of the sheet here, and you can see a little history. 2010, we didn't have a sewer rate increase. 2011, we didn't. 2012 was 5%. Oh, thank you, sir.
Here's some reclaimed water.
Perfect. Oh, man, that's good. So, like I say, in March, we did a 20% in 2013, and our rate increase proposed tonight is the 22%, which is a big number, but it's going to carry us a long ways into the future. It's going to give us a lot of economic growth potential. And there's a lot of communities out there that aren't paying a lot of higher rates than we're going to be paying now, but their facilities are going to end their useful life, and ours are new, and it's going to carry us 30 some odd years in the future. So You know, it's kind of an investment in the future, but we now have these loan payments that we have to get paid. So anyway, you can see, and then after this year, it should go 5%. Really just kind of a cost of living almost rate, maybe a little bit more. And then as we get into 19 and 20, we're looking at that satellite facility that we need to build. So kind of coming down to what the average person is paying for their sewer rates. A single-family residence typically consumes on the average 738 cubic feet of water a month. And so the rates are based on that. And the base rate in 2012 was $26.65. The consumption rate was 0.0533 per cubic feet, and that gave you a rate of an average single-family dwelling of about $65.99 a month. Based on the rate increase we did in March, that was increased to $31.98 for that base rate. The average consumption, dollars per cubic foot, is there, and gave you a current average rate of $79.21. Now that's an increase of $13.22 over 2012. The rate we're proposing tonight is, it would increase that base rate to $39.02. The consumption rate would go up to the 0.781 per cubic foot, and your new November rate would be $96.64 per month, which is $17.43 over and above what your increase was in March. But I don't know what to say. It's unfortunate, but these things were required. We had to do them. To kind of get us through this year, we've used $1 million of the revenues to pay our debt service this year. And to kind of soften some of the rate increase that would be needed, we burned down some of the reserves that were in our sewer utility. These rates, if we approve, whatever rates we approve, will start in February of 14. And just based on the fact that if we didn't do a rate increase at all, the utility would be almost $624,000 in the red by December of 14. And then we still have these I&I projects to do. And so anyway, that's kind of the recommendations. Obviously, we need to do some kind of rate increase in order to get ahead of these payments that are due. There would be additional small payments in future years up through the year 2020. And then we need to obviously continue to look at finding grant money for Basin 3 and others. And so that's kind of it. That's the proposal, at least through our consultant that reviewed all of the things that we have to do here and did do, and these are the rates that came forward as their proposal. So that's what we're bringing forward to look at. I know Dave and Kathy have been working very hard in trying to find a way to soften this a little bit if possible. And it's been a real team effort trying to see if there's anything we can do to change what we're faced with here. But that's kind of the overview, and with that, I'll turn it over for discussion.
Questions, comments, Mr. O'Leary?
Barry, if you can queue up that next presentation, and I'll need the clicker, Greg. Thank you. We've been getting some pressure about the rates, as you might imagine. And so today and a couple of days last week, we took a pretty serious look at what we were doing for rates. And I didn't want to look at it just in terms of what happens for 2014, but what happens for 2015 through 2020, as Greg just showed. And by the way, thank you, Greg. It was a good presentation. Anyway, I want to start by saying that when we started this project 2 days ago, or Thursday, the idea was not to not have a rate increase, and I don't think it's possible to not have a rate increase. We have to make bond payments. But the idea was, well, maybe we can find a way to smooth it out and bring it on incrementally rather than all at once. And so we needed a method to bridge some cash flow issues, because you about need all the money in order to be able to make cash, in order to be able to make the cash flow needs. In other words, so you can pay the bills that are coming in with the money that's coming in. So the other thing is that, well, we also have some projects that need to be funded. They're maintenance projects, and of course what got us in trouble to a certain extent when we started looking at this some years ago is that we maybe hadn't done enough, hadn't taken good enough care of our system. And so it's been a kind of a hallmark of the present commissioners that we don't want to let it go back where it was. We need to take care of it. The other piece is that, as I said earlier, you got to pay the bills. So how do we pay the bills? How do we find a way to do that? And then, and this is, we also need to accumulate some reserves in order to replace existing in the future, so that when another 10 or 20 years goes by and stuff starts wearing out, that we aren't back borrowing more money, or at least any more than necessary. So that was kind of the, okay, those are the guiding principles. So what can we do with that? So but before we get there, let me give you some caveats. What Greg showed you was largely the result of a consultant study that was really comprehensive, and we paid quite a fair amount of money for it, and we do that periodically to make sure that whatever rate increases we're doing, that you can justify it, and so they do a real comprehensive look at it. What I've done with Kathy's auditing, mainly, is to go back and look over it after a couple of days, and maybe 8 or 10 hours worth of work. So it's not going to be as comprehensive, and also the results bring the dollars pretty close. So I mean, you're very close to not meeting cash flow needs. So what I'm saying is we could easily be surprised with what I'm going to show you. So in other words, and also we may need some adjustments to this, assuming that the commissioners want to do a multi-year set of rate increases, as we've done before, so that people know what's coming. You may need to tweak it a little bit in the coming years if we run short. I think I'll tell you that we're more comfortable with the proposal that Greg made, but we're certainly sensitive to the concerns that citizens are raising about the amount of the increase. If you listen to Greg, we've been at this quite a while. We knew it was coming, but people begin to pay attention when it actually gets here. So we've been talking about it for years. We really got down to the significant amount within the last year, and then and of course now that we're about to do it, that's what we're now that's what's got people's interest peaked. I want to say that one of the requirements of our financing is that we accumulate reserves, both in order to be able to make payments in case we don't have bond payments in the future. The bond companies or the bond buyers want to make sure that you have at least enough money to make 1 year's worth of payments on the bonds, and they're significant. You saw that one on the sewer treatment plant that was almost $1 million. That's annual payment. So they want you to accumulate reserves in order to make sure that if for some reason you have trouble making a payment, you can pull that out of reserves and you can get the money to the bondholders, to the people that put up the money. The second thing is that they want to, maybe to a lesser extent, but to some extent, they're requiring us to put money in the bank in order to pay for replacement of some of the equipment that goes into the systems. And so this is the requirements for accumulated assets or accumulated money that we have to have between 2014 and 2020 under our financing rules. So one of the first places we looked and we said, is there some way to not put some of that in the early years and maybe put some in later? And so Kathy did a fair amount of work on that to try to figure out what that might look like and Kathy, our finance director, what that might look like and whether that was possible. And essentially, if we don't accumulate these reserves, then we get in trouble. We get in trouble, we'll get an audit finding, which means that they'll tell us that we're not managing our money properly. But moreover, what will happen is that on some of it, if we don't accumulate it, then we'll be out of compliance with our bonds, and it will make us more difficult for us to borrow money in the future. And there are emerging needs. So there are consequences if we don't do this. So well, let's look somewhere else. I wanted to also talk about rate increases because there's quite a bit of confusion, I think, out there, even amongst us, about what's been done in the past. So I actually went back and got the ordinances and looked at the rate increases. And we actually have been doing rate increases, incremental, since at least 2004. In 2003 is when the city shifted to consumption-based billing on the sewer bill rather than a flat amount. And so it didn't make any sense to go back further than that. It was comparing apples to oranges. So in 2004, we started doing rate increases, and I think there was at that time an acknowledgement that we were going to be building infrastructure in the future. The commissioners were thinking about where we are, 9-10 years ago, and in fact, I'm sure they were thinking about it before that. I know that they were because I was here in 2004, and they were talking about it. So there was an expectation that we were going to get there. So I don't think that our problem is related to not having rate increases in the past. The problem is that we've had to spend $52, $53, $54 million in recent years on these projects, and there's not even 10,000 people here. And so the economies of scale aren't very good for us. So that's our reality. But okay, so how do we smooth this out? I mean, if we got to pay it, we got to pay it. But how do we get there? So let me keep going. This is the schedule on the left is the one that Greg just showed you, and the one on the right is an alternative that may work. And I'm going to give you a little caveat here. I want to go back and compare a couple other numbers because, like I say, this is a work in progress. But we think we can get it down to that amount. Notice that it smooths it out in the first years, and then what this does is it yields the same amount of resources, the same amount of money in the bank in 2020 using both methodologies. It also includes, the alternative rate schedule includes borrowing $300,000 from the stormwater fund, so that you've got the money in the sewer fund in order to be able to make it work. Now that's a problem because we got to go in and look and see what that does to the stormwater fund. But it's about as healthy a fund as we have right now, so it may be the best one to borrow from, but it may limit our ability to do future stormwater projects. Alternatively, we may be able to get some relief on some of the bond accumulation requirements or other requirements, or we may be able to manage around it, but it's going to take time. So what I'm showing you is maybe a worst case scenario in terms of what we might have to, what we can go get. So let's look at, I got some charts that show you what kind of trouble this is. This is near term for just 2014. Now, if you can see this chart, green is good, red is bad, yellow is zero. It's balanced. And if we don't raise money, if we don't do anything, raise rates at all, our sewer fund ends up the year, and I think that's something on the order of $6 million upside down at the end of 2014, and it bottoms out at almost $1 million, 600,000. Sorry. Those are big numbers on there. So I know you can't see them. Assuming that we do the 22% rate increase that Greg was suggesting at the end of 2014, then we just finished the year to the good. Now, the year end is an important time because that's when we got to close our books, and that's when we have to reconcile how much we have. And you can, as long as we're finishing in the good, that's okay. If we finish upside down, then that can't work. That's not sustainable. So this gets us there with the 22%, and assuming that we do the 15% rate with this $300,000 bridge loan, then we're a little bit better off. We're a little bit into the green. But then we got to pay back the $300,000 plus interest in out years. So let's look. So what happens in out years? What happens from 2014 through 2020? So let's look at that. Without rate increases, we die pretty quickly. I could have changed the scale on the chart, but it makes the point that if we don't do a rate increase, we're in real serious trouble. We can't pay our bills. This is what happens if we do the 22% rate increase. Is that you kind of bump along there at minimal reserves, and then at the end of the period, you got some discretionary reserves you can use to build projects beyond what what you're required to do for the bonds. And so and if you do the 18, it's almost the same thing. I changed it a little bit of a percentage, like 1 percentage point at the end for the rate, and it gives you virtually the same place. That many years out, you can't tell for sure. It's the best you can do. So what you end up with is it's a 15% increase, and it gets you almost to the same place. But you got to borrow the money, which we didn't really want to do. We're not comfortable with that. In fact, I'm not comfortable going in either one of those, being for several years, having very limited discretionary reserves in the sewer fund. But the alternative is to raise more rates, and nobody wants to do that. Frankly, nobody wants to do what we're showing you right now. So, at any rate, that's the alternative. Those are that's our reality. So, I think Greg and I will try to answer questions. Maybe Kathy too, if necessary.
Well, first, let's go with our commissioners, and then we'll go into public testimony. So, Commissioner Pennell or Commissioner Olson, do you have any questions or comments about this scenario?
I guess the only comment I have is that it's unfortunate that there are folks who are trying to make it sound like they are the only ones who are concerned about this. And I assure you that's not the case. I know I have, and Commissioner Olson has too, gone to Mr. O'Leary and expressed our concern about this. And nobody wants to raise rates. But as we've seen, I think pretty clearly, it's something that has to be done. The alternative, and I remember 14 years ago when this first got started, we were looking at a complete building moratorium in Shelton because we did not have the sewer capacity. And if we had not done anything, we certainly wouldn't be looking at the hall development at this point. We wouldn't be looking at attracting any business whatsoever because we wouldn't have had the infrastructure in place to deal with it. We're fortunate, I think, that we're in a place now where we can attract other businesses. And the unfortunate thing is that we have to pay for it. That's just the way of the world. That's what happens in your household. That's what happens in your city. I remember a very wise man once told me that there are only two things you have to know about sewer. It runs downhill and it costs a lot. And we found that. But we have an underground infrastructure now that we can build on. And, several people have commented on all of the streets that have been done. Wouldn't have made much sense to do those streets before we did what was underneath them, because if you pave them and then you go back and dig them up, that doesn't make any sense on a lot of levels. So we've managed to maximize the benefit from the money that we've spent. I think we've developed partnerships that I think have really helped us tremendously. If we had to do all of this on our own, can you imagine what we would be looking at now? But we had partners who participated a lot in easing some of those costs for us. So, I really think that we've done everything that we can do to make this as palatable to everybody as we can. All of us up here pay the same rates that you do. We don't like it any better than anybody does, but I think we need to understand what we've gotten for that money, and I think we've gotten a lot.
Questions, comments?
I couldn't have said it any better. I'd just like to reemphasize that Commissioner Pennell said that we had no choice in this. This was a state mandate, and because of it, we're in debt, but we are in a position to attract large-scale development, and we're all betting on the economy to improve. And when it does, we're in better shape than a lot of communities in Washington State. And I think that it's unfortunate that we got to pay for it, but, the hand-wringing is over. It's just a matter of how much and how fast do we have to pay it back.
I guess my question is are you finished? My question is about the $300,000 loan. In order to possibly do a 15% rather than a 21%, I guess. So that would be, it would not be prudent to possibly take that from our strategic reserves if we, rather than borrow that 300,000 for this? Is that totally out of the question?
I would not recommend that you pull money from the general fund for one of the utilities. That's our public safety pool. That's where the public safety dollars draw from. We did that to save the storm fund. We actually put money from the general fund into the storm fund and back in around 2005, and it was in dire shape because it just didn't have, the rate structure wasn't supporting it. And I've just never, some people have never forgiven me for that. So I just.
It's not your first choice.
No, it's not.
Well, I guess I've been, and I'm sure that.
Another comment on that.
Sure.
The 15% versus the 20%, it's only a matter of like $5 a month. And I'm not so sure that borrowing against our surplus like that's such a wise idea, because we do have to pay it back, and then if we did need it for another reason in the storm fund, we're going to have to raise rates in the storm fund to replenish it. So I don't know that we're doing ourselves any favor by saving $5 a month. In the long run, we got to come up with the same pile of money in the end product. So I would be careful about borrowing against anything we have in reserves right now in another area.
Is that an accurate description of what we're doing?
But you don't trust my numbers?
Well, no, I don't. It's big. Government costs a lot of money, and so I just want to make sure.
I'm not sure which part.
Well, I was just on the 300,000. You had a plan to pay that $300,000 back.
That's correct.
Okay. And that if $5 a month doesn't seem like a lot of money, obviously not to us, because we make money, we have jobs, but we have, what do you call, a household income per capita, which is $5 or $10 a month means a lot to people out there that we serve, and that's what we do. And so if we, I guess I would be thinking that $5 or $10 a month would mean a lot more to somebody that didn't have it than somebody that did. So I would probably say that one of the other problems is not just a 20% increase, it's a 20% on top of a 20% within a 6-month period. That's the big thing. It's not just once a year, it's all within a 6-month period. And I'm talking to businesses, and some of their rates went up $30 or $40 a month with the 20, so it wouldn't be $5 to them, it would be $30 or $40 to certain businesses, or maybe hundreds of dollars to others. So the $5 would be to probably a single person living in a single family dwelling or something. But
the average.
Yeah. And again, we're all here, we're trying to do the best we can to figure it out, and I think that the citizens deserve a conversation about it and deserve our best efforts. So if I was to make a comment or a decision, I would fight for the 15% at this time. I could support that because just what I said, that $5 or $10 may not mean much to some people, but it could mean a whole lot to others. And that if we are faced with such huge increases in such a short amount of time, any help would be better than no help. So I would lean towards the 15% plan at this time for that, and just because that's what I would do. So that's my comment on that. At this time, I think we could open this up unless my commissioners, fellow commissioners have any other comments at this time. We could open up to public testimony about the sewer rates, and we have some people that probably want to talk about this. So let's do that, seeing as how we're having fun here. First person, it looks like Lori Mercer, if that's correct.
My name is Lori Mercier, and I live up in the Hillcrest area. And I bought the paper Friday, and I was just appalled when I read the rates increase. So I'm here to oppose the sewer rates. I canvassed my neighborhood Sunday, and I talked to 20 of my neighbors in person, and every single one of them was appalled. And we started comparing our bills. There was a family of 4 that pays less than mine, and I'm a family of 1. I have here in my hand my bill and my neighbor's bill, billed exactly at the same time. And if I could submit these for you to look at while I'm talking.
Thank you.
You'll notice on there that my water was $17 and his was $22.52.
$20.52.
Okay. And my sewer, I just gave you my paperwork, so now I'm going blind here. My sewer was $65.90. What was it? $65.96. His is 48 something. I'm not sure now because I just gave you my copies. Doggone it.
Do you want to?
That's all right. We looked at it. It's okay. Why don't you take it back?
Okay.
Yeah, we looked at it, and we trust what you're telling us here.
So anyway, I called down here this morning and I asked them how they base the sewer bill. And I spoke to a nice lady, and she said, well, they base it off your water consumption. So, okay, she says, we base your sewer off your water consumption. And, excuse me, I'm nervous.
That's all right.
And then there's a base fee on top of that. She said that was $31.98 a month, and then you're charged per cubic foot of water usage, so it's higher than your water. Your sewer's higher than your water rate. So I asked her if she could explain to me what the base fee was, and she just said, well, it's $32. Well, wait, let me get the exact amount. It's $31.98. And I asked if that's the same for everybody, and she replied, yes, for if you're a resident, it's the same amount for everybody. So, and then you're charged .0640 cubic foot for water usage. So my question to you is, if I'm only using $17, why am I being billed $65.96 for sewer when my neighbor's using $20.52 in water and his sewer is $48.84?
I wouldn't know the answer to that question.
And I had all 20 of my neighbors that I spoke to was showing me their discrepancies as well, and they were huge. There was one woman that spoke to me of living up off of Turner. Her bill's over $200 for the 2 of them. I spoke to a family of 4. Theirs was cheaper than mine.
I would say that, I mean, we have meter readers, they go out and they do these things, and I don't think that they fudge the numbers. So there, I think someone from our city staff would be happy to sit down with your bills, talk to you about that, probably.
It's not just my bills, though, it's the whole entire, I mean, this
Right.
is 20 people out of
Right.
10,000 people that live in Shelton that probably are having the same issues. Because we don't communicate anymore, I feel it's a real issue. I would like somebody to investigate it, because I don't know where, the numbers are not crunching in my book according to Mr. Clark here at all. Where he got his numbers in that survey, I have been paying $65.96 straight across the board for the last 7 months for my sewer, and I live alone.
So you're saying your water consumption would obviously be going up and down?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no matter
Okay.
what my water bill is, my sewer has remained at $65.96.
Okay, so what I say is, I don't read the meters and I don't do that, but I do trust that our people are reading the meters and that they're giving accurate meter readings. So that's all I could generally say about that, unless there's something, a huge conspiracy theory that I don't know about, which I don't think exists. So on that issue, if we could let all the other people talk about that, we appreciate your comments, and we're working on it. So,
Okay, and I just wanted to add one more thing. The meter, now, after the city came in and redid the meter readers, the little round meters, it fills up with water. So there's no way to even read the meter.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next is Kathy McDowell. Kathy, did you want to speak again? No. Okay, very good. Forrest Cooper, you don't need to speak again, do you? Okay, moving right along. Oh, wait, did you want to talk? Come on up, Forrest. We're going to be going on to our third hour here shortly, so let's just...
Man, I seem to always trigger that.
Move her along.
All right, I'll move this right along. Forrest Cooper, 409 Railroad. Thank
Okay.
you, Commission, Mr. Mayor. I'm really excited tonight. I always like seeing when you have an actual public hearing to see that people turn out. It's really
Yeah,
interesting. You know,
absolutely.
I try to attend almost every commission meeting that I can just to be more informed about the process. And it's been really fascinating over the last couple of years seeing the sewer process. I've been through several meetings that have talked about each phase of the development, and you see exactly what's happening. And I would encourage more members of the community, if they want to be more informed about what's happening, to attend some meetings and come check it out. And then it could kind of help answer some questions. For instance, I have a question right now. Taking a look at one of the slides that Greg had up there, there was a figure for around $2 million, I think it was, for upgrades for when the Shelton Hills from the Hall Equities goes in. And my question is, I understand the economic benefits to our city by a development like this, and I would just like to know, is any of that $2 million upgrades paid for by the developer, or is it all come out of the ratepayers' pockets so that the developer can further profit? I'd like to know, is that something that when a big development comes in that does put strain on our system, that we have to upgrade it? Is it just the ratepayers that pay for that upgrade, or the developer who essentially causes the problem? Do they have any sort of fee or large sum of that they have to pay? So if that's a question that you can answer now, you can. If not,
Mr. O'Leary,
you can
did
talk
you
to me
want to
later on.
answer that? Steve Goin?
The simple answer is the developer would like to have a system like any citizen where they simply pay an impact fee for their project costs, a facility charge for water, sewer, what have you, a traffic impact fee, and get their permits. A project of this size and scope is more complex than that. The city will enter into an agreement with the developer to cover an array of costs, not just for that are necessary to accommodate their project, but for transportation improvements and other elements that are needed to accommodate something of that scale and magnitude. So the simple answer is we will be negotiating how to arrive at what is their fair share of that cost. It won't be 100% of the city's cost. It won't be 100% of the developers. But there will be a negotiation to determine how much capacity their project is taking up, and we'll use those figures to anticipate what their share of that improvement would be.
Gotcha. Okay, so it doesn't entirely come out of
No, no.
ratepayers. There's negotiations and a lot more involved. Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Tom, did you want to say a few words here? Come on up. All right, yes, Tom, you're on.
Okay, for the sewage satellite project, I was wondering if it'd be possible that the Federal Department of Energy would help fund at least part of that as a demonstration project if we capture the methane and use it to generate power, also the heat from the project, selling, of course, the renewable credits like a lot is doing in downtown Olympia. Seems to me, since they were able to get funding from the Federal Department of Energy, that we should look into that as well.
Tom, appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. I'll call them in the morning. If there's money out there, we want to know where it is and we want to ask them for it. All right, next, looks like Tracy Moore.
I may have similar questions to what Forrest asked, but our community is obviously hurting, and I appreciate the fact that you all pointed out that you're paying these same fees too, but it's hard, it hurts, and I think it's really rational thing to ask questions. As far as the GFCs and impact fees, are those being raised considerably at this point? And is there a latecomers agreement, just not in the big developments, but in the general city area? And with the expanded service into the GMA, if we have more connections, then obviously the costs are going to be spread further. So does that mean there is a potential for the rates to go down, assuming if we were to have a big building boom in Shelton Hills or in another development? Is there a possibility that rather than the projected costs that we were seeing, is there a possibility that the loans will be paid off earlier and our costs may go down? And then my final question is, how does our current sewer rate and our projected sewer rate compare with other cities of approximately the same size and the same demographic as far as the income level? So those are my questions.
Yeah,
Thank
well, I think Steve could answer probably both of those.
In terms of the first question, the consultant's analysis made some assumptions within that, and they were directed by staff to do that. Those mainly relate to the projections for growth, and you're right, depending on how many new customers the utility receives, that's going to affect how many new ratepayers you have, as well as those charges you'll receive for connecting to the system. In simple terms, the general facility charge is generated to provide a mechanism so that a new customer playing field with all the customers that have been paying for years into the system and making these annual or monthly payments for operations and maintenance costs. The anticipated general facility charge based on our consultant's analysis will need to be reduced or should be reduced in part because moving forward we'll have less capital projects to fund than we've had in recent times. So they're telling us, based on the growth that you're projecting, you can lower your general facility charges, which might be a incentive, if you will, for development to come to town. Part of those assumptions included the Shelton Hills project breaking ground in 2015, and over time, the utility taking in customers that are in the UGA that are on septic systems. And that was a very, we tried to be conservative in that approach. We didn't think that a majority of those customers would come into Shelton and be part of our system over a 20-year horizon, but we thought some of them might. So we gave them a sort of conservative figure that would anticipate we'd get some new customers just from folks that have septic systems that are failing, need to hook up to the city sewer, or they're along that periphery. But by and large, we tried to be fairly conservative with those numbers. That's a good reason why in 6 years we probably should go back and look at those again. Tracking growth over 6 years, we'll probably have to make a course adjustment along the way. Does that answer your question?
That's good so far. The other question was that similar cities comparison as far as the actual rates that other cities are paying.
I don't have that at my fingertips. When we prepared that in March, we compared ourselves to about 8 or 10 other jurisdictions in the Puget Sound area. Some were a little larger, some were a little smaller, and we were a little above the mid-range at that point. This would probably put us in the 75-80 percentile range, roughly, I'm anticipating. As Gray spoke to, however, a number of those jurisdictions are on the haven't yet made the improvements that Shelton has made, and they're looking at a significant increase when that occurs. I can't predict when that will be, but as they need to make the significant upgrades that Shelton's made, they're going to face rate increases like we're seeing now.
I think infrastructure has suffered a lot in a lot of cities. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, Bonnie, you wanted to speak?
I just wanted to encourage you to keep it as low as you can for a raising. You say, yes, it's only going up $5. Well, you got to add that other 20% on. And let me tell you, our rates didn't go up only $5. So you're looking at a 40% increase. Well, let me tell you, Social Security didn't go up 40%. And a lot of people are out there struggling. And we've had to cut our budgets in certain ways, and I think that you all should really work on trying to cut your budgets and pulling the money from someplace else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Appreciate everybody's comments tonight. Okay, I think we're moving right along. We're going to be going into our third hour here very shortly, so we will have to extend due to like what they have, public meeting laws and whatnot. But at this point, I think we've heard, does anyone else want to speak to the sewer rate issue now? Okay, Mr. Davis, you want to come up? You've already signed in. We'll accept your sign in there and speak to the issue, please.
Thank you, Tom Davis again. I have to ask an obvious question, and that is, have you considered, well, you probably have, considered restructuring the long-term debt and or the issuance of additional bonds to spread this burden out over the next 20, 30 years? If so, or if not, what are the terms of this general obligation bond that we're involved in right now? And when does it end, and what is the interest rate?
Well, the loan just kicked in, so I don't imagine we want to redo a loan that just started. So as building all this in, the loans, we just started paying the loans just a few months ago. Mm-hmm. So, and those aren't 20-year loans. I think those are 30 or 40 years loans. Mm-hmm. So, and the interest rate is under 1% or something, 1%, 1.5? Between 2 and 3%. So, I mean, they're very low, loans, but any interest, low interest or not, you still have to pay those loans back. And so your questions are valid, but I believe I've answered them. I mean, we're just starting this borrowing, paying this money back process. And at this point, I don't think there's much hope in trying to restructure debt. We're not into it. We're just starting. That's why we're feeling this huge jump right here.
Well, in the question that is involved, restructuring would also include issuing additional bonds so we could spread this out. In other words, I'm trying to find out what the debt-to-income ratio is for the city, whether or not that's a viable conclusion.
Our city administrator can probably answer that question for you.
Maybe Kathy knows the debt-to-income ratio. The loan, the specific borrowed money that's got us where we are is to fund the construction of the sewer treatment plant, of the rehabilitated sewer treatment plant. It is we actually did some restructuring of loans earlier this year, and we're able to get much more favorable interest rates by doing that. And I think, what was those were 5 or 6% or something like that. So we got right in the normal bond market. The sewer loan itself, I don't think you could get any other financing that's any more favorable because it's a 40-year loan at very low interest rate, much better because we got it from the USDA. So, you assumed that we looked at it. We did. We've been working pretty hard trying to mitigate this. I think our preference would have been that we got grants for this as opposed to loans. In fact, we did get a little bit of grant dollars, not as much as we had planned on when we got a better. Well, anyway, that's another story. But we try to get grants, and we're out looking for them right now. So anyhow, I appreciate it. It's exactly right. It's one of the things we've been trying to do, Tom, to get it.
Well, I thought the public might appreciate having that on record.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. What we're going to do at this time is close the public testimony, and what we're going to do is close the public hearing at this time. Okay.
Your Honor, the commission rules limit the meeting time to 2 hours.
Right.
However, the commission can decide to extend the time period for the length of the meeting. So
I think we need to. So, what do we have to make a motion on that? We're just going to make a statement about that.
Sure. I think we need a motion. We just need a minute entry.
All right, very good. We have a motion extending our...
I would move that we extend the meeting to the length of the meeting, whatever time we need.
Wow. All right. Sounds good. Is there a second?
I don't know, it sounds a little open-ended to me. Can we start with a half hour?
I think we'll be done in a half an hour.
All right, I'll move
All
we
right.
extend the meeting time for 30 minutes.
All right.
I'll second that one.
All right, there's a motion and a second to extend our meeting time for an additional 30 minutes beyond the 2-hour limit, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, now we are faced with what we're going to do, because it seems like there's a little uncertainty about the final numbers on our budget or what we're going to do. So if we have a first reading, what would you recommend at this time? Because we have, I guess, a little confusion still on a few different items that we're still working on, but this is concerning the sewer rate, I guess, and so.
I would suggest that, well, I guess what we need is some feedback from you as to what we need to do with what the proposal is. I would suggest that you go ahead and have the first reading, because if we string it out, it'll be worse. The later in the year we implement
Sure.
them.
Okay.
So, but oh, thank you. I was doing that for you earlier, so. Forgive us, we're learning the new system. So, what I would suggest is that you move on it, but then we can make amendments between now and the time and final adoption. And we need to hear from you as to whether you want us to move ahead with the 22%, whether you want to go ahead with the 15% and the associated schedule, or whether you want us to do something different.
Okay. So, comments on the 22 versus the 15%. If we can agree with that, then we might be there on this issue. So, Commissioner Pennell.
I guess I would be in favor of the 15 based on the idea that it smooths things out. Instead of going from 22 dropping down to 5, you're having it ease in. If we can do that under the rules of USDA, and if we can determine a favorable way to borrow from the Stormwater Fund. So if we can come up with something that gives us some surety on those two issues, then I think it would be better to have it more level rather than spiked.
As I look at this, everything's based on about a 6-year projection, and either way, within the same amount of time, we have to come up with the same amount of money. Right. Either it's whether it's 15 now or 21 now, in 6 years, we're going to have to raise them incrementally. So I would be more in favor of what the staff recommends, just because I'm a little hesitant about borrowing from an inter-fund like that. I know it's going to hurt, but we're going to have to pay it anyway in the next 6 years. It's going to be the same amount no matter how we incrementally increase it. So I would just soon not take the chance of borrowing against a fund that could be in trouble itself in 3 or 4 years or sooner. So my inclination
Okay.
is to lean towards the 22% now.
And my inclination is to do the 15%. Now, my inclination would be to do a 5% or a 10%, but 15%, we've debated it, we talked about it, and I would settle at the 15%, and I think that we can move forward if we can do that legally. We're not defaulting on our loans, and at this point, that's what I could go along with. So it appears we have a couple of commissioners that would entertain the 15%. So if we made a motion or amended our communication on this to state that, that's probably where we would find concurrence.
Yeah, I think what we'll do on that basis, commissioners, is take a look at finish the work. I mean, this is in progress. We'll take a look at the work and come back with you with a more detailed report in a week.
Okay.
So.
Well, and we can still have the first reading, because then we can put it under old business for next week, and you can flesh out the
And
numbers.
we'll make recognizing this is where you appear to be going, we can make changes to the ordinance for your consideration next week. We just don't want to delay.
Okay.
So.
Clark?
Commissioners, just for clarification, it would be the 22% with the additional increases as proposed by the consultant, or just the 22%? And no. Well, I understand, but that was your suggestion. The other two would be the 15% with the 10, and the basically what Dave's scenario was.
It is what it is to pay our bills.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure the other years were also part of your suggestion.
Unless there's some big grant money that comes in that helps us out, which we're all hoping for. So,
just
yes,
conferring that Vicki suggested, and it does make sense. Maybe what we should do is do a first and final next week rather than having a change that we've got to deal with, a significant one. So we'll just take what you said, we'll bring it back for first and final next week. And, and the public knows what we're doing based on the meeting tonight.
So we put this on hold until next week. We don't have to do any motions or anything at this time. All right, moving right along. What we are going to do is go to our consent agenda. My fellow commissioners have ample time to review the information in the consent agenda, and are we ready for a reading of the consent agenda? Looks like we are. Tracy, could you please read the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers number 82072 through 82142 in the amount of $249,574.78. Transfers and direct banking fees, charges in the amount of $14,764.15. Interlocal agreement between the City of Shelton and Mason County for sharing historic preservation funds, and authorize the mayor to sign. Resolution number 1055-1113, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, declaring an intent to vacate a portion of Delaware Street. K Street Rehabilitation Project, Nova Contracting Final Acceptance Revised. Resolution number 1056-1113, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, approving an interlocal agreement with the Association of Washington Cities, authorizing the city to participate in the self-insured program, and authorize the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement. Department of Ecology Coordinated Prevention Grant Acceptance, authorize the mayor to sign. Commission meeting minutes of September 9th, 2013, September 16th, 2013, and September 20th, 2013.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The agenda passes. There is no old business at this time, but there are many new business items. Continuing on into our third hour, Mr. Mike Michael. How are you going to present these tonight? In a short and abbreviated fashion?
As short and abbreviated as possible, and to that end, I would request that we move item number 6 to the top of the list so I can talk about 5 and 7 somewhat concurrently that way.
Okay, so moved.
All right, item number 6 on our new business is the Basin 3 Sewer Rehabilitation Design Funding through the Department of Ecology. We currently have a Centennial State Revolving Fund loan to cover the cost of that effort, and as part of that, we've been working through additional environmental documentation requirements for some additional potential funding sources for the construction. As such, we've realized that we need a few extra months to make sure that we get everything in place, get the contracts closed out. There is no impact to the consultant's contract on this. It's just a time extension to facilitate getting all the documentation put together that we need. To that end, we have talked with the Department of Ecology. They're on board with that, but we need a official request from this end, and that needs to be signed by the mayor. So we are before you this evening requesting that by putting this on consent next week, that we authorize the mayor to sign the attached draft letter requesting the 90-day time extension to the ecology loan.
All right, any questions or comments? Looks good. Okay, I think we concur that we will place this on our consent agenda for November 12th. Next, and again, I'll talk somewhat concurrently and then we'll separate them out for the action pieces, but basically what you have before you with the last 2 remaining items are draft applications for funding from USDA, Department of Agricultural Rural Development. This is the same funding we have used for the wastewater treatment plant as well as the Basin 5. In this case, we're looking at Basin 3 as well as the Upper Mountain View Pressure Zone project within the water fund. We have found that USDA funding tends to be very favorable, and following direction from the commission, we're seeking as many options for favorable funding as absolutely possible for the commitments that we've made both to partners, our regional folks, through our comp plans, and the mandates given to us by various state regulatory agencies. So to that end, what we have in front of you this evening in both cases are very draft forms of these applications. There are significant portions of this that will change over time, but to get the ball rolling and get this initial information in the hands of our USDA counterparts, we need authorization from the commission to have the mayor sign certain documents to start the process. First up would be the one for the Upper Mountain View, and again, just like with the ecology loan, we're requesting that the commission concur in staff presenting an application to USDA and starting the process, and we're doing that by placing this item on consent for next week. Again, as with much of our other funding, this is just an application. It doesn't commit us to anything until the actual agreement comes back with various conditions, amounts, interest rates, grant loan split, et cetera, and at that time the commission can choose to either accept or reject the offer at that point. That answers my question. Is there any other questions or comments from Mike Michael?
These are the ones that there is a possibility of up to 50% forgiveness or grant?
That was the one that we submitted back at the end of September to Department of Health based on the trust fund. USDA, again, we don't know what the split is, but USDA tends to have some sort of grant loan split based on our community's ability to pay.
Right.
And that's part of this first phase of work, is them looking at information to make that determination.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments? So this item that you're just talking about, this is just the number 1 on my sheet, and that's the Upper Mountain View Pressure Zone.
That is correct.
Just that one. Okay.
Just that one?
Okay, it appears we can concur that we'll place this on the consent agenda for November 12th. All right,
The final item would be item number 7, number 3 on your list of new business tonight. Basically the same request. Again, this is just an application so we can get some information in the hands of USDA, start the process. Does not commit us to anything. Ultimately, there will be an offer made likely on their behalf with grant loan mix, interest rate, all of those kind of things. And at that time, the commission would be able to accept or reject that offer. And again, we're asking that the commission concur in submitting the application by authorizing the mayor to sign on their behalf and putting this on the consent for next Tuesday.
Yes, Mr. O'Leary.
Just for everyone's notice, or everyone's information, the mayor and I met with Congressman Denny Heck a month and a half ago or so and asked him to see if there was anything he could do in order to move as much grant dollars towards it as possible. Especially, and we were looking specifically at Basin 3. That's the most critical project that we need to do. It's $3 or $4 million, depending on where the bids come in. And actually, I heard back from Congressman Heck's office. He wanted to make sure that they got a copy of our application to USDA so they could bird dog it in Washington D.C. So again, we're trying to move as much of that off onto the grants as possible and away from loans.
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions or comments? If none, then we will place this on the consent agenda for November 12th. All right, moving right along, we have an administration report. Anything to report at this time? Okay, yeah. All right, there's a general public comment period, as if we haven't had quite enough of those, but we always welcome general public comment. You coming in again, Tom? Yeah. I like you because you only speak for about 30 seconds, so come on up and give us your input.
I was wondering if in the Shelton Hills, when they do eventually break ground, assuming that they will the Shelton businesses or residents get any of this work in the construction phase? I know that in other developments in other states, there's usually a certain percentage, usually around 5% for minority or other owned businesses. Could we negotiate that with something like Shelton owned businesses such as laying sod, pouring concrete, anything, up to the developer's discretion, of course.
We would like that to happen.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Tom. All right, let's see where we are now. I don't see any other public comments and any administration final touches. Greg Clark?
Really just informational for the commissioners. Our city shop on Saturday experienced in the windstorm a large significant portion of the roof got ripped off, and so we're going to need to enter into some emergency repairs on that. I just wanted to let you know that our plan is to get 3 bids as soon as possible, select one. I'll work with Dave and we'll get the work underway, and I'll come back next Monday and brief you on kind of where we're at and what the dollars are. So I just wanted to lay that out there.
Okay, any other administration? Yes.
I just wanted to use this opportunity to remind the commissioners and speak to the community at large. There's a open house Wednesday night to discuss the downtown zoning district, in particular the First Street corridor. It's here at the Civic Center starting at 5:30, and at this point we're just kind of laying out some of the issues that we've seen in just learning more about the corridor and how it relates to the Railroad Avenue downtown zone and how it doesn't, and just looking for a lot of people to come out and give us some good ideas. So yeah, it's at Wednesday at 5:30.
All right. Any other administration or final touches there? All right. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, not Monday, next November 12th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon due to the observance of Veterans Day. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.